You think November's about turkey? You're wrong. It's about foo. It's about family of origin. So welcome to FOOvember, you guys.
We are so excited. What are we doing in FOOvember? You tell me all about it.
FOOvember means family of origin, right? You're foo because that's where you come from, that's where you came from, and that's where you're going to go. Your family of origin is the university of relationships. It's basically how you learn to do everything. And sometimes if we learn those things crappily, we do those things crappily. So we're going to teach you how to identify them. Keep what you want.
Excrapolation.
Boot what you don't want. FOOvember.
Yes. And so every episode this month is going to have a family of origin concept into it.
Today, we had a really fun hangout with Stephen Murphy of the Nook podcast, which I want you guys to go check out. But we're talking about family of origin, how to fare well through the holidays and all this other stuff. It's a really fun conversation. He's a good friend of ours. So,
right. And it kicks off our FOOvember series that's all about family of origin for the month of November. And he just had a lot of great things to say. And he actually interviewed us for his show. So you'll hear that vibe in there. But we just thought it was a great episode and wanted to share it. So go check it out and you'll love it.
Is there such thing as a family of origin 101? When you're diving into it with a client or a pair of clients for the first time, how do you wade into those waters? Or you're those crazy marriage coaches that just go jumping into the deep end?
Well, sometimes we jump in the deep end, but we do like to preface it with a little, well, in therapy speak, we call it like some psychoeducation, right? So family of origin, imagine a family tree. Imagine you and your brothers and sisters and mom and dad and grandmas or whoever you were raised with, biological or non-biological. Think of it as a mobile, like in a baby crib. It's got all these hanging things. And what you do or don't do affects each one around it. Like a mobile, if the little kid is in the crib and like hits one little thing, guess what? It goes around
the
and
whole
around.
System
It
gets
ripples and ripples.
Right.
It ripples. Yeah. So, family of origin is, and these aren't our words, this is actually Dr. Les and Leslie Parrott. He calls it the university of relationships. It's where we learn to be married. It's where we learn to be a person, to be a student, to be
a
father,
sibling,
a brother, a sibling, a mom or dad, or a community member. It is what is normalized. Think of it this way. So most of us move out, I don't know, I'll just speak for America, right? Say move out around 18 or 20 or something like that. If you do anything, and if you're around anyone for 18 to 20 years, you are going to pick up a lot from them, right? You're going to learn what to do. And then once you are like have the cognitive abilities, a lot of us learn what not to do. Like, I'm not doing that.
Or saying that or feeling that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we start with our clients about asking them, like, what was it like growing up in your family? How did you feel? And a lot of them will be like, oh, it was like they'll tell you, they'll give you an insight into their family of origin right away. Like, oh, my family was super happy. Like we could talk about anything. And it was really fun. Or it'll be, oh, we didn't talk about anything. My parents never fought. I didn't even know that people fought because you just shoved everything under the rug. Right. So we like to kind of dive into it by asking them what their childhood was like. And usually they'll just reflect right back to us what they're telling us about their family of origin without knowing what the concept is.
Yeah. Well, this is a good example. I was on a call earlier today and one lady was like, because I asked what was modeled for you growing up, like seeing your parents. Well, they were loud. They fought a lot. They really didn't communicate and they went and stormed off and stuff. And then the husband was like, we were really just conflict avoidant. I hate conflict. I don't know what to do with it. Right. So it was very quiet. That doesn't mean that it wasn't present.
Right.
It just means that we weren't communicating or talking about it. And then oftentimes we find ourselves married and like,
we just go right to what we know. We
wait
do
a minute.
The thing we saw.
Yeah. And this it gets so funky. It goes from everything from where the silverware might go in the kitchen to how you raise kids, to what you do with money, to where you vacation,
how
where
you
you
load
don't
the
vacation,
dishwasher,
everything
do
and
you
anything.
Save money.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. It literally touches everything.
It's got its tendrils in every single thing that we do.
So is this like where you guys like to dive in with a new client, or does it kind of depend on who you're talking to as to when you introduce this as a topic or a heading?
It comes pretty early. We do this in our intake session. We typically will couch it under this, like, just tell me about your childhood type vibes, right? And really what we're doing is we're trying to figure out, because if I say, okay, tell me about your family of origin, they'll start overthinking what I'm asking.
Right.
And so
Yeah.
essentially I'm like, just tell me, like, what was it like? What were the sort of general thoughts? Like, who ran the show? Was mom more, assertive, or was dad? Or what happened when there was conflict? And we have to start there, because that shapes everything as it moves forward with our couple, right? So if I ask a client and I say, they tell me that in their home, mom always got her way, right? If that's the vibe that came from their family of origin, and then we get into session with the husband there, and we find that the wife is trying to always get her way, we go, oh, that's his family of origin.
Wait a minute.
Right?
Yeah. And then how does that present itself in the marital relationship?
Right.
Oh, well, we're arguing because she always wants what she wants and I can't do anything.
It really illuminates it exposes sort of the architecture behind how the couple functions when you get to the family of origin sort of foundations. I am smart.
The architecture, the bones.
You heard what I said. Write it down.
Seriously. Well, what you're illuminating for me is how contextual that is when you start working with a couple. In that not only, I'm sure it's giving you guys great insight as to moving forward with them, and that you've got that to reach back for, but maybe even more so that introducing that as a thought process for them, that has to open all new doors. And it's like, oh, wait a minute. I never even considered that her relationship with her dad, or the way that grandfather was, or whatever that scenario that they come from, must give them a whole new place to see their own situation from.
Yeah. Well, let's give a quick contextual example in that. And like you brought up, the daughter's relationship with her dad. And so Melanie is the youngest of 5, right? And also birth order has a lot to do with how we grow up. I'm the oldest. And, compared to the oldest to the youngest, actually, that's a good pairing based on the research. Was pretty interesting. We didn't know that when we went into this.
Well played, Studleys. Well played.
I know, right? But Melanie's relationship with her dad was always there, no matter what. Dad could fix anything, and I can literally ask anything of my dad, and he'll do it.
Yeah, and it was like, dad has no feelings. And I will say, my dad had a traumatic brain injury when he was very young. So he's super robotic. He's awesome. He's very, very successful, but he's also like void of feelings. Other than just nice, he doesn't have other feelings. And so that is what I literally took from my family of origin, what a dad is supposed to be, which obviously is just what I'm basing off of my own father. And I overlaid it onto Seth and was like, what? He has feelings? This is dumb.
Right.
Like, what am I supposed to do now? I can't just yell at him and he'll be like, okay. Right. Because that's kind of how my dad was. Not that I yelled at my dad.
Right.
Let me be very clear. I didn't yell at my dad. But that was, it was really important when you start looking back and going, wait, how does my family of origin impact what I see when I look at my spouse and what I think marriage is going to be? Right. It is crazy.
Yeah. It's really insightful. And like you said, Stephen, you can take that information and go, oh, okay, today we're going to go this way in our conversation. And let's explore this. Have you thought about this? Or as we get to know the clients more, it's like, oh, since I know that about your biological family and family of origin, I bet this might come up for you. Let's go upriver and talk about it so it doesn't come up later in more ugly ways.
Well, so then I'm imagining that once that is kind of established as a baseline, does that awareness for the couple, anybody that you work with, does that really set them up for that much more success when they can constantly be considering not only where my family of origin brings me, but my spouse, my neighbors, my kid. I mean, literally everybody we come in contact. I mean, I realize that your specialty is the marriage space, but the more that I have pondered this, even in my limited view, this plays out in so much, even as you get to know a good friend. It's like, why does that guy always get so mad about, when he shares, oh yeah, he had a difficult upbringing or whatever, and you realize how far reaching some of these things are.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it does. It sets people up to understand these things better. But before you get to that point, for some people, it can feel, I know for me it did anyway, it can feel super offensive. Like I need to defend how I grew up somehow because he would point it out. Again, let me remind everyone, Seth is a therapist. He was in graduate school getting his master's in marriage and family therapy, and he'd come home and tell me all the things that were wrong with me, right? This is very common. It's a very common thing. I was like the most diagnosed human on the planet,
Right.
and my family has everything wrong with it, right?
Wow.
So
How much fun did you sign up for?
I know, really. Hey, look, I thought I was marrying a drummer, y'all. But anyway, turns out I was wrong. So he would come home and talk to me about all these things. And I immediately, like, my heckles went up because I didn't know how to manage this. No one told me that this would happen when I got married to a therapist. But it was something that at first I was like, he is wrong. He's wrong to say that my mom should be a different way or that my family is negative or that, well, like he was pointing out what wasn't healthy.
Mhm.
And I was trying really hard to defend it and explain it away. Well, it's because of this. And if you only knew that. And so I do want to share that because that might be the initial reaction that someone has when they hear this stuff. They might hear family of origin and we're painting a really rosy picture.
Mhm.
And inside they're like, but you don't know the backstory. And I'm like, well, we get it, but it is important to look at it really complexly, but you may have feelings about it.
Yeah. Just a heads
Sure.
up. That is pretty common to where, when one partner or whatever learns this new information and goes, this is the greatest thing ever. I have to share it with my spouse and tell them why, hey, my way
This is
better.
why you're so messed up.
Yeah, well, don't say that, of course.
You're welcome.
Yeah, you're welcome. But when we learn new information like this and have an insights and know that it can be helpful, we do want to share it. Now, I was completely overzealous and said a lot of things incorrectly and could have done it in a much more.
You probably were actually fine. I was really, really terrible when we were first married. So I'm going to back out of that and say that you were probably fairly balanced.
Yeah,
and I was basically off my rocker half the time.
That's very mature. Very mature.
Yeah.
Okay.
I thought you were going to say something. I'm sorry.
I thought Seth had more to add there. I was just Melanie, I think, just took a big leap forward there, and I wanted her to know she got props.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to talk about the impact of family of origin specifically on relationships around the holidays, because I think that is something that's so important, even if you're not doing holiday traditions with your family and you're going and doing like a Friendsgiving or whatever, but specifically and especially if you are a married couple and you're going to one or the other family's homes,
or both,
or both, or all, and your friends, like the impact that can have, because that to me is something we tend to realize it after the fact, and we don't sort of front load and go, how could this holiday go sideways if I don't think about family of origin? And then we go through it all crazy and look back and go, what just happened? Right. So that's a conversation that I would love to have, and like the impact of family of origin on the holidays and why it can get so funky. And do you have any thoughts on that? Just like right out of the gate? I have many, but
let's dive in. Obviously the holidays are coming up. We've been doing this for 17 years, so we kind of have it dialed in, but that doesn't mean that things can come up. But let's speak to maybe the early years, and Stephen, you too. Like, what was it like combining your two families, with Thanksgiving and stuff like that? And then again, this goes back to family of origin. How do we do Thanksgiving? Because my version might be very different.
Yeah, actually, let's just share that. I think that would be really fun, because I know that there are funny Thanksgiving. Like, we went to South Carolina. I think it was for first married for Christmas or something. And we weren't even married. We were dating. Imagine that. I show up with like a shaved head. To his,
pressure.
His the deep South Thanksgiving. And they have way different traditions just culturally, right? They do the New Year's, like there's just lots of, we were there for Christmas and New Year's. And just the
we put gravy on the turkey, not just
you eat.
No, we do.
Black eyed peas and
no, that's New Year's.
I know. I'm trying to think of the different, whatever. Anyway, they just do things really differently. And like in his family, his grandmother is British. She's from England and she's 95. So like there's this super matriarchal British influence in his family of origin. No matter what way we slice it, Nana has a very, she's got like queen vibes, like hyper queen vibes. And so the crown vibes. And so just like from the very first get-go of us doing any family holiday at his house, it was very much like, oh gosh, I don't know what I'm doing. And his grandmother asked me so kindly, who taught you how to cut food like that? I was like, not the Royal Army or whatever, whoever taught you, I don't know. I just cut because I can cut. But that was a really sort of like a weird moment for me, because I thought, well, everyone sort of does it like my family. I just didn't even think about it, right?
Right.
So what stands out to you? Oh, what were you say?
Well, no, the cultural difference there, and so let's go back to family of origin and think about it this way: as it relates to marriage, I know that we have had a lot of arguments and miscommunication over the years of holidays, as far as like everything:
Oh gosh, yeah.
Easter, Valentine's Day,
Mhm.
Thanksgiving, all the major U.S. holidays, right? And when we weren't on the same page, and when we go into another environment, like her family, her large extended family, or kind of the environment I came from, my large extended family, we must, absolutely must. I want like married folks to hear this, been married 1 year or 30 years, it doesn't matter. It is so important to be on the same page as your
right.
spouse, right? And I'm thinking of all kinds of like tips and tricks and stuff. So we'll share a couple.
Mhm.
So let's be intentional about this. Hey, we're going into, I don't know, Auntie Sue's house for Thanksgiving. There's going to be a bunch of family there
Mhm.
and all this stuff. Your family's going to be there. And let's make sure that we are on the same page. If one of us is, crazy aunt whoever is like, had too much wine before turkey and like starts getting weird, then I want to be able to be like, hey, Mel, are we cool? Or
Right.
do we need to leave or whatever? Because we want to be on the same page there. Right.
And I think it's really important to understand. We talked about this on another podcast like 2 days ago, and it's a real thing. There is a thing called holiday regression, which when you
sure.
go
I made it up on that.
it was real. I Googled it.
Oh, for real?
So it already exists. Holiday regression.
I
Like,
created
How
it
smart
without
you
even
are,
knowing.
Seth.
I know you're a genius. So like you go back to your family of origin, and I'm the youngest of 5 kids. I'm the baby almost of our whole family unit. So in my brain, I'm like, I don't need to do anything. I just sit.
Yeah.
I eat like the little, I eat the little crackers and the cheese, and I don't do nothing. But Seth is like, look, we've got 3 kids. Can you do something? Like, why do you change when we go to your family's house? And it's that holiday regression. So family of origin becomes even sort of more magnetizing around the holidays because of that sort of regressive, like I revert back to when I was little or younger. And that might even be like a dominance thing. Like in our marriage, I might be the dominant person. Like I make the choices and I whatever, which is not ideal, but that might be the case. But then in my family of origin, it might be my mom. So I might all of a sudden turn into a doormat because my mom's around. And now Seth's like, where did my wife go?
Right.
Like, why are you, like, why are you being so weird all of a sudden? So there's lots of those things to factor in. And I think one of the key things is having the conversation before you're in the setting, right?
Oh,
that
it's
was
got to
going to
be
be my next. That was going to be my next question. While I'm sure that some folk might consider that just a high ground for a possible fisticuff, is it not a really good idea to sit down and go, okay, Thanksgiving's in a couple of weeks. How do we handle this?
Yeah.
Could we have honestly, I think back to when my kids were a whole lot smaller, and if it was time to go, one of us would you just put your arm around and you give a little tap. Just a little finger tap that says, I think we're about done here. And so there didn't have to be any kind of big scuttle. None of those, could I please have a word with you outside? Just subtle, because we had a bit of a plan going in to minimize some of those frictions. Is this healthy?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great idea. And you have to be intentional about it, because think of anything else we do. Like if I'm even going to the drive to the store, at least I have an idea of what I'm going to get when I get there.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? I just don't be
Unless you're going to Target.
Right.
Well, yeah.
Target gives you the ideas of what you're going to get when you get there.
Yeah, that's true. Like product placement, all that stuff. But with saying that is, hey, let's talk about it beforehand, based on the other times. Like, okay, I remember last Thanksgiving, it was bonkers because just who knows what. Let's plan for a different Thanksgiving this time. Let's be on the same page this time. And one thing this is an exercise that we talk about on the show all the time, and also with coaching clients, is, okay, let's be on the same page and share what our expectations is. And this is literally as simple as this. And we do it almost every weekend.
Right. We do it very
Hey,
regularly.
Melanie, say, it's 11 o'clock on a Saturday or something, kids, we kind of sleep in, we're just chilling or whatever. Hey, Melanie, what are your expectations from now until like 4 p.m.?
Right. And let's do like a real one. Like, let's say this upcoming weekend. And my answer might be, I was hoping to finish painting the bathroom. And then after that, I have Pilates and I'm going to go walk with Pam.
Yeah.
And then I'll say, what were you thinking? And then he'll say,
my expectations is I might wake up early. It's deer season out here in Washington, and go to the woods, right? I'll hopefully be back by 1 if I don't get anything we'll make plans if I do, kind of
I
thing.
thought you were already awake. I thought it was 11 o'clock on Saturday.
Oh, sorry.
Your
I don't
story
know.
undid.
Well, it'll be earlier than that, right? But then that's the plans. And maybe, hey, let's go to that new restaurant that just opened up, for dinner. We'll take the kids out that night. And so what we're doing is we're not assuming anything. What, you're going over to your friend's house or this or that, or you're going hunting all day?
This, right?
Yeah, because that's where a lot of couples go sideways. So let's overlay that same example into Thanksgiving. Hey, we're going to Auntie Sue's this Saturday for Thanksgiving, or whatever day Thanksgiving is on.
Thursday.
Oh, Thursday.
Every time.
Okay. Oh, it is?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Anyway. Thursday of the month.
Okay, so the third Thursday of the month, we're going to Auntie Sue's. Let's make sure we're kind of chill. I like to watch football with your brother and dad, in there, and the kids will play and stuff like that. And then, I'll text you if anything comes up or people are feeling weird or whatnot, but let's just make it chill the whole time.
And I will add one layer to that is you do have to have an awareness of where it goes bad, where it has gone bad in the past. And that conversation can be really challenging to have because, again, we tend to want to defend our family of origin because it is all we know. It is what we grew up in. What feels normal to us is our family of origin, right? Even if it's highly dysfunctional, it still feels like our normal. And so at like times, Seth that we have a really clear example of this because we would go to his family every summer in South Carolina. So we're going 3,000 miles away, totally different culture. People were not around all the time anymore because he moved out here, right? So we would go there and we would see these cycles that would happen. And it's always in the summertime because that's when we would visit. But we noticed that 3 days in, someone would lose their crap. And it was usually, I hope that your parents aren't listening, it was either one of his parents. It was either his mom or his dad. And we knew, like, eventually we figured it out. We're like, it has actually nothing to do with what we're doing in the moment. I think it has everything to do with the tension of us not living there. And so we figured out the cycle of, hey, the third day of our visit, every single time we get yelled at by one of your parents. Let's figure out how to navigate this differently. And I remember being like, how do I talk to Seth about this? Because this is going to hurt his feelings. Like, these aren't easy conversations to have, right? Like every time we have Thanksgiving, Aunt Patty gets snockered and then we're all having to listen to her or whatever. And then she cries. Like we have to have these conversations in a way that is not super like judgmental or unkind. They're more of like an observation that will lead to a different, like the finger tap,
And you just made me think of something that I can remember blowing up so bad where in light of what we've been talking about, almost like a family of origin collision. In that we would go to Thanksgiving at my folks' house. Well, end of the meal, that regression thing, that's about where Dad and I would hit the couch and just basically slip into a turkey coma. My mom would go to town, the Enneagram 2 poster child that she was, and she's now going to clean everything. And my wife is ready to jump in the kitchen and start helping because that's what she did on her side. And she's looking at me like, what are you doing? What do you mean? We eat and then we couch and you get in there and you help your mother. I've never, okay. Now she's, there's just a strange meddling of things in those moments. There was just like, next year, remember what happened last time?
Right.
How do we do this better?
Right.
And I wish that we had a little bit more insight like this in those moments that should be inventoried so that the next time those situations come around in the family gatherings that you don't get those high friction times.
Right. And it's funny that you use that example like of the like feeling like a collision because we say that in episode or season 1 that a marriage or even a friendship, any type of relationship is literally two family of origins colliding. Like they're like galaxies just exploding into each other. And a great way to figure out what is something that is sort of like a family of origin ingrained thing inside of you is to answer the question like, on Thanksgiving, my husband should. Right? Should, we're usually told like, oh, don't should on yourself. That's bad. Blah, blah, blah. Like we make fun of that word, but it's a very clarifying word when you say, oh, well, yeah, you should be, and then fill in the blank with whatever it is. Some women might say, oh yeah, my husband should sit on the couch and watch a football game because maybe that's what their dad did, right? So they would be like, oh yeah, that's what you should be doing. And they might be offended that their husband is up trying to help in the kitchen, like some weirdo, right? But in their world, they go, that's not what you should be doing right now, right? Yes. So if you're listening to this show or watching it and thinking, how does this apply to me? How do I figure out what is my family of origin stuff? Just answer that question. Like during Christmas, I should, or my kids should, or my husband should, or whatever that is. And then whatever pops into your head immediately without any filter or any like extra thinking is what probably was presented in your family of origin. Right.
Sure.
But it takes a lot of awareness to do that. This is no small feat.
Oh yeah. Well, and that's you're tracking right where I was thinking with that, in that obviously this is going to take a good conversation in a family, in how you approach that. But is there a way to take this almost too far? It's like, do you call your folks and go, hey, how can we do this better? I realize, like, I don't want to like pre-plan the fight here, but we just, as much as, retail outlets everywhere want to make the holidays look like, oh, this is the greatest time and smiling people and everybody brought a pie, and it just looks, holidays look amazing on TV, but we all know that it plays out so much differently. And maybe you've got family showing up that you haven't seen in years, especially after last year. And you're getting things reintroduced. This is a really long way around the mountain for the question of how much do we try to control in those situations? And that, we can get things squared away in our squad, but what about everybody else?
Right. So I have the perfect answer to that. And the perfect remedy.
I can't wait.
I know.
No, seriously. And this is like a couple of tiers here. So first of all, it starts with, we must be on the same page with expectations and actually our shared vision. What does a successful turkey day look like according to us, not according to all the other variables that we can't control, aunties, grandmas, whatever, crazy brothers, who knows? Because we can't control those guys, right? So first we have to establish what that perfect day looks like for us. And when I say perfect, I'm not like saying Hallmark card. I'm just like a successful time where we weren't pulling our hair out and then we don't end up fight on the way home in the car, right? So a calm kind of...
Raise your hand if you've been there.
I know.
Yeah, exactamundo. And then, have the same expectations, have the same shared vision for you and your partner there and your kids, right? Because we can control the kids more than we can other, people we haven't seen more, I guess. Well, maybe that's the illusion of a parent. I can't control my kid. That's just a side note.
There's another episode.
Yeah,
I know, right? But then go in, and I have thought about this, and we've tried to do this actually with both of our families, like announce or say or hint, hey, we want to do this differently. And oftentimes we get weird sideways looks of like, what are you talking about?
Right.
Like, what?
Yeah.
It's weird. Don't try to do therapy with me or like whatever kind of thing. I've actually heard that before.
You're so cool
on a couple of different fronts.
Seth just reinvented Thanksgiving.
Right. Oh, my way wasn't good enough. Huh?
Right.
Exactly. That's why we're talking. No. But being on the same page, having that shared vision, and then modeling it.
Right.
Right.
Versus announcing it.
So not announcing it like, hey, Dad, hey, Mom, I want to have a pre-Thanksgiving warm-up before Thanksgiving. Make sure we're on the same page. They're like, no, what are you talking about? So I would go in fact, we have practiced this on various trips back home, even here in Washington with your family and stuff. We're like, hey, this is what we're going to example. This is what we're going to model. And this is what people are going to see. And we don't even have to talk about it.
Right. And there's also like, this is what we're not going to do. Because, there are things that are going to be triggering, right? So like if I start to regress and I start to act like the baby of the family, Seth is not going to pout and get mad at me. He may give me some sort of signal, like flip me the bird. Just kidding. He would say,
again.
I imagined you hold up the turkey.
Right. The real bird.
The real bird. But anyway, that's beside the point. That sound is beside the point. But that there may be a signal or a thing where we agree ahead of time, like, hey, if I start to regress and kind of ignore your like requests as a wife or whatever, like just let me know and I will sort of reunite with you and we'll get back to where we wanted to be. Right. There was something else I was going to say, but it completely fell out of my head.
Well, Steven,
I know what it was. Sorry. I'm going to say it. So the announcing part is the tricky part because that's something that people often feel inclined to do when they learn something new, they want to share it. Right? But when it's personal growth and more importantly, when it's a united couple growth. So we see this with our coaching clients a lot. they all of a sudden level up and have a new awareness of self, a new awareness of family of origin, and they want to share it. And partially because they also want to reinforce that they're doing something healthy. But what it does that often nobody realizes it will do is it tends to make other people feel ashamed of their own actions, ashamed of their lack of connection with their own spouse. And it makes them feel defensive of their current behavior. So as much as you may want to share these things, even this podcast, you may want to be like, oh my gosh, mom, you need to listen to this, or sister, whoever, Samantha, you need to listen to this podcast. Oh my gosh, it's so good. They may take it as offensive. They may be like, what are you trying to tell me? And I don't appreciate that, right? So that's a thing that I think, is the school calling?
Looks like it.
Oh man, the school is calling.
Dun,
but
dun,
that is
dun.
something, I know, I actually might let you just chat with Seth. But so that is something to be aware of, that even though you're excited about it, and even if you have a game plan with your spouse, announcing your growth tends to backfire. So
unless they're ready to hear it,
or
but
they're
it's
really
like,
open-minded people.
Yeah. So I'll give you a perfect example. And so
for real though, I am going to answer that call, and you just keep talking. This is real life, y'all.
Okay. Hey guys, taking a quick break. Hoping you're enjoying the conversation about family of origin. If you're like, man, this is resonating with me, I need some help, I want you to go pause the podcast and directly go to betterhelp.com/us to get hooked up with a licensed marriage and family therapist, or a licensed counselor, or a social worker, or whoever. A licensed counselor will help you process all of this stuff. You got childhood stuff, you got PTSD, you got all kinds of stuff. Go to betterhelp.com/us before the holidays to get the help that you need, so you can go in the family with a good vibe. You're differentiated, you're feeling it. Go to betterhelp.com/us to get the help you need right now. All right, man. Back to the show. So this was very recent for us, Stephen. In fact, it was when I was on this trip, when I saw you in the Atlanta airport.
In Atlanta,
yeah, serendipitously, we're like, yo, we're in the same place at the same time. Awesome.
That was a lovely moment. I'll just say it.
It was really cool. And so I was back home. I did a thing in Nashville and then flew down to South Carolina to see my folks. It was just me solo because I was on the East Coast anyway, right? And I am doing this exercise program. It's called 75 Hard. And I just talk about it. I share about it. I don't say, this is the best thing ever, everybody around me has to do it. It's like, oh, I got my other workout, and they always see me, carrying around a giant water bottle. So they get curious about it. And this is for my mom and dad. And I was just talking about it because they asked, hey, why do you drink so much water? Well, I'm doing this thing and I feel so much better. And here's my routine and blah, blah, blah. And this and that. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. And then so that piques their curiosity in that. And they're like, oh, well, what else are you doing? And I talk about the other stuff that I'm doing, like stuff that we're creating, like podcasting and coaching and, seeing you in the airport and like, whoa, this is cool. And so that gets them to talking, and it opens the door for a conversation. Now, did I bring it up and say, hey, I'm doing this thing, I have growth mindset and all this stuff? No, not at all.
No,
it was,
you were just living it.
I was just living it, right? It was just literally your actions, right? So actions speak louder than words and all this stuff. So in context into a possible conflictual Thanksgiving or Christmas or whatever, I want folks listening, and I'd tell Melanie, let's also do this. I want us to not talk about it, not spread it around, just live it, just model it, right? And then we say this with parenting stuff, more is caught than taught, right? And then literally my mom and dad on that trip, they caught my vibe of, I don't know, doing cool things and being happy. And they both said it was really a good visit, honestly. Better than
Was this your latest one?
Yeah, just the latest one.
Because I wasn't there.
Yeah, I think so.
Yep, pretty much. That's what I took from it.
It was awesome.
My takeaway. Leave Melanie out of all visits.
We have had conversations since I've been back in Seattle with mom and dad of like, hey, wasn't that visit just cool? Like, man, you rubbed off. Mom and dad actually said this, like, whoa, you rubbed off on us, right? And literally they're exexercising and reading different books and stuff. And I didn't say a word about exercise or reading books, which is really, really cool. So living it. So if you want a good Thanksgiving, share expectations with your spouse, have the shared vision for it, do the little tap, or sometimes we text, right?
Right.
Like,
Yeah. We will text
each
each
other. On
other.
the couch. I'm like, hey, time to go, lady, kind of thing.
Your drunk aunt keeps talking about
and then model what you want to see, right? Be the change that you want to see, kind of thing.
And I think a really important factor there is that in the past, we would try to talk to our families about our growth. And it's really weird because it's like, we need to prove that it works before we say we want to try it. Cause almost everyone around us would be like, well, that's a dumb idea. Even if it's like, you're thinking of someone like Tony Robbins, like he is doing this thing and he's successful at this thing, but you try to bring it up and someone's like, oh, he's a weirdo. And they immediately like shut all of your ideas of growth down. So don't share the ideas, just live them out. And the proof is in the pudding, right? Like people will see it and feel it, right?
Well, as we're talking about this, the word coming to me is just peace. That if just because you're in agreement with the people who are most important to you and you show up with a game plan, you show up with, hey, we talked about this, we figured out how in our scenarios, how we should best react. If all I am is just peaceful and I'm not going to get baited into that argument or whatever things that seem to rise up in holiday family gatherings that you just kind of like, that I think that's exactly what you're talking about. And I hope that people can lock on to something like that. That if all you have is your own peace of mind to go, and just let stuff roll off, how much better off are you going to be in a time that might have been inflammatory in previous years?
Right.
Yeah.
And what's interesting that this sort of popped this into my head is I've been studying a lot lately about attachment and different ways that we learn about relationships as we grow up in families. And one of the things they talk about is this idea that the less we allow the world to be complex, right? Let's just start by saying the world is extremely complicated. Relationships are complicated. Biology is complicated. All of it is complicated. Nothing is simple about life, the world, how things work. But when we in our mind think it should be black and white, someone should talk this way to me, they should act this way, whatever, we bring our own lack of peace. We bring our own turmoil into a situation by not allowing things to be as complicated as they are. So in the holiday season, if you find yourself, Kim, going to Aunt so-and-so's house and normally we fight about this thing, ask yourself, what would it look like if you allowed it to be complicated and didn't try to make it black and white and you didn't try to make it smaller and fit into a box? Now, someone might try to do that to you. They might try to make you smaller and shove you into that box. Let them. It's okay.
Yeah.
No big deal. You don't live with them every day.
Yeah.
Right?
But this isn't something, and this is going back to being intentional and have a pre-plan. This isn't something that you can do like when you're pulling in the driveway. Hey, I'm going to be cool with everything.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
No, let it
I'm going to be so intentional.
Right. No.
Yeah.
It is a practice that takes a long time and must be retooled and rehoned. And
you have to know your own triggers as well. Like what you mentioned, like I'm not going to be baited into this argument. You don't know what is actually the hook that gets you, like the bait that really makes you fall for it, then you will fall for it. And even that process is really like soul searching in its own way.
Can I ask something?
Absolutely.
This would be for both of you in real time. So the holidays are coming up, right? What is a possible scenario that may trigger you, Stephen, and also may trigger you, Melanie? Because we'll be going to Melanie's house for this Thanksgiving.
My house?
Well, sorry, your family's house. But just in a real time, I'm the therapist is very curious.
The therapist is in.
Yeah. So what might trigger you, Stephen?
Well, I'm immediately thinking about how, being the father of grown children and how well, I'm never going to call it full circle, but it's certainly something to consider. Like, well, yeah, when my kids were little, we told them how things were going to go. Well, they move out and they start getting into other circles. And immediately, the first thing that came to mind for me is like, well, we planned this. Why can't you be here for this? Not realizing that there's a whole lot of other cogs that have to happen between kids in other states, my grandkids, other, in-laws on their side, that all of a sudden that soup just keeps getting more and more convoluted from all the different angles. And all I'm is like, well, yeah, that's fine. But what about this? We planned this.
Right.
Just respect this. And understanding that I know I need to have that flexibility, because I can remember my mom roasting over this kind of stuff. It's just like, well, Stephen, the way we've always done this is, yeah, I get that, Mom, but I have in-laws now.
Right.
And it just, what you're talking about in that complexity, it's like, I don't know. I feel like I'm 55 years old and still just getting a grasp of things we'll never be able to get a handle on all that complexity. But that's what comes to mind for me, is that there's a lot of people that you're trying to get scheduled all at the same time.
Yeah.
I wish you'd stop
Okay.
hitting your boom stand.
I wish I would stop hitting my boom stand.
So that's good. That's something to look out for, and it's not to expect it like, oh, it's going to happen no matter what. No, it's like, all right, if this happens, I know what to do because I've pre-thought about it and have a plan around it. And also talk to your lovely wife about it too.
Right.
So you guys are on the same page.
Yeah.
So what about you?
For me, the first thought is, I know that this is the only thing I can think of that would cause me any anxiety in my family of origin, is that if something is unplanned that you are out of the loop of, it tends to bother you. And so I'm like, how can I mitigate that? Or is that even the right word?
Yeah.
I don't even know if
That's a
the right
good word. Yeah, but it sounded really smart.
Shouldn't have questioned it. How can I mitigate this? But my fear in that is is this going to make Seth mad? Which is silly because it's not like you ever really get mad.
Right.
But more importantly, it's sillier because all I needed to do was tell you what was going on. And I tend to not do that. For example, my brother was in town. He lives in Hawaii. He was in town yesterday. I literally didn't even tell you he was going to be here. And you're like, he's here? And I'm like, yeah, didn't you know? Why would you know?
I told you telepathically yesterday.
I told you in my mind when we weren't talking.
Yes.
That is obviously very easy to resolve. All I need to do is communicate.
Yeah.
Clearly.
So there's a thing to be said in that you actually have control over that.
Yeah, I certainly do.
And oftentimes we feel that we don't have control over things like this. But if we stop to think and go, okay, wait a minute. Oh, I do have control. It's just communication.
What would it be if we were going to your family?
To my family?
Yeah. Which this is, I think, a little harder because we've worked really hard to not have these things. So it's a little bit more challenging for us, I would say.
I think let's see, what would my triggers are possible kind of like,
what like things
scenario.
What would set you off?
Well, I think that I've been differently aware of it. And based on this recent visit, it's like, I feel like very strongly because I've been thinking about it and like attracting this to happen kind of thing. And also praying about it. Is like, I'm in a different mindset of interacting with my family now. So maybe old stuff, I'm not in that kind of frame of mind. I'm like, I want to lead by example. Like, hey, let me help here. Or, you know what? That's not a big deal. Let's fix it. Or, hey, mom, this is how things are or whatnot. Right. And so not a lot. That doesn't mean that something couldn't come up.
Well, and I think in the past, there was a lot of anxiety. There was a lot of a family of origin based, like, if I do this, I'll make them mad.
Yeah.
Or if I say
which is
this,
a whole different
right.
thing. That is only pertinent to our relationship. It's like, well, I don't live there, so I've kind of been like on the outskirts of the family a little bit.
Yep.
Right,
which
is
of that system, which is totally normal. It's not a bad thing or not a good thing, but it is something that I'm aware of. And like that kind of like oldest brother guilt of like, I'm not here. I'm
unspoken
a zillion miles away.
expectations
Yeah,
of
unspoken
that.
stuff. So
Yeah.
Right, but this is the time of year when that's going to happen because you've got a lot of people that are away from their families, even if it's just a couple of hours or across the country, that you are going to get those collisions again. That it's like, wow, we haven't really talked in a while, and now we're spending 4 days together or whatever that shakes out to be. That. Just how much better is it to have you, even if obviously your relationships, your immediate family, yes, but just your own internal plan. How am I going to show up well here?
Yeah,
in something that could go sideways.
Right.
Yeah, because we do get to choose how we show up. If we don't have control over other stuff, we do have control over how we show up. I was just laughing, Steve, when you said, I'm going to be here for 4 days. I was like, is that why like the flask was invented? Because it's very concealable and you're like, go outside. And,
that was pretty funny. It's in your boot. Yeah.
Very indiscreet. Yeah. Like, that's how I manage, which obviously a lot of people do manage that way. And that is not one way to do. It's one way to do it, but it's not the healthiest. And of course that can
FOOvember flask coming this month.
Exacerbate other problems kind of thing. So.
Well, and I'm glad you said that because I was just thinking, okay, I just interviewed a police chaplain. Weird segue here. One of the things he talked about that I loved so much is that he talked about the ministry of presence. And just sometimes it's just important to be there. Yeah. And this is also one of those times that when the stress of family gatherings can really get to people and they may overdo in the alcohol. How about one more glass of wine? No, how about two? And if it's not that side, how quickly is everybody going to start picking up their phone
Mm.
And immediately now, instead of having a group of 12 people who haven't seen each other for a while and should be sitting down and enjoying a meal, you've got 3 people cooking, 2 people watching TV, and the rest of us just spinning through social media, having nothing to do with anybody. How can we be more present?
Right. I think in that, I love the idea of, we talk about this a little bit, but setting intentions, but really saying, like, casting a vision. Like, and here's the way I look at it. Like, if I could close my eyes and I knew that Thanksgiving wasn't going to go sideways and nothing weird would happen, what would I actually want? We don't ask ourselves these things often enough. And if I will tell you honestly, from my perspective, like, I don't know if my one brother's going to be here. He just moved away. My other brother certainly isn't going to be here. He lives in Hawaii. My sister's not going to be here. She lives in Tennessee. So I have one sister here, maybe one brother here, and then us and my parents. It's not going to be huge. What would I want to see? If I'm being honest, I would love to see, and this hasn't happened for years, card games, maybe a puzzle.
I knew you were going to say board games.
Yeah, board games or card games
Yeah.
and a puzzle, and maybe even some kind of craft where the kids can, decorate a cake. I don't know. That's not even a thing you do on Thanksgiving, but that would be really fun. But what's going to happen is probably football. Mom cooks and cleans. I kind of help. The kids are on phones because they're now old enough, right? And it's basically going to feel like a weekend. It's not going to feel like Thanksgiving, really. But if I can walk in there and say, this is what I would love to see happen, it's going to spark. It's going to feel inspired, right? In spirit. It's going to feel.
You're not going to proclaim, hey, hey, Mom, this is what I would love to see happen. You're going to bring the cards.
Right.
You're going to bring the puzzles. You're going to bring the board games.
Right?
And the energy, right? Hey, guys, check it out.
And you can float that idea out and say, wouldn't it be so fun? I brought this thing of bananagrams. I brought, go fish for the littler kids, or I brought checkers. And we've done this many times at family vacations where the norm, this is like summer vacation. And in my family's whatever normal thing, they'll do like nothing. So we'd be like, let's bring all the board games we can bring. Let's bring kites and bubbles and strings to make, funny phones for the kids or whatever. And it's really about like stepping in with that energy, but knowing ahead of time, what would you even want to see if you knew that it would work? And that's really hard for a lot of people because they go back to what they've seen in the past, right?
Now that I'm thinking about it, I want to do a Friendsgiving again.
Friendsgiving is also highly recommended.
Yeah.
It's just easy.
Sure. Yeah, but even in those situations, you can get that kind of passive aggressive, oh, that's the way you do cranberries, huh? Oh, how fun for you.
I can see the can outline.
I know, yeah.
Yeah,
Worked
exactly.
hard on that, didn't you?
Wow.
Sweet.
Pour that can all by yourself?
Actually, it's really tasty.
I love canned cranberry sauce. I love it.
I do like the
I don't do cranberries at all. So right away, this is probably the end of this friendship. We had a good run.
Yeah. See you later.
Thanks.
See you never, Stephen. See you never.
Exactly. Well, and maybe just one thing to kind of wrap up with, and again, not to dwell on a negative, but in some of those inevitable situations where you do get people that rub up against somebody wrong, and inevitably something does go south, and maybe somebody even leaves the party early and angry, is there a good recovery plan for something like that? And okay, how do I reach out to somebody? We've got a long history or whatever that thing looks like. How do we rescue a relationship in situations because the holidays can be so stressful and pile on what was already there?
Right. That's a great question. And I think right out of the gate, the main thing that people want is to feel understood, to feel like their opinion is valued, right? So even if it's a crazy opinion, they want to feel like, I heard you. And they do not want well, I hear you, but... Right. They don't want to like have their opinion knocked down. So if it's a difference of a difference in thinking or a disagreement that you have or whatever, and someone left feeling hurt, something as simple as saying, man, I didn't think about I didn't think about that version of how you see it. And I'm really sorry I hurt your feelings. I honor what you were saying or whatever. And again, this is really tricky because we have to allow the world to be as complex as it is.
Right.
And so I think right out of the gate, you have to say, not every opinion, my opinion is not the best one. Right. The way I see the world. Yeah, it's just mine. There's a billion of them. Mine's not the best.
Or I like the idea, and we do this with couples, and this is so difficult, and we've done it 100 times and hated every second of it, but then we were glad afterwards. Go
A root
first.
canal. Just kidding.
No. So glad I got that.
Didn't see that coming, but okay.
No, and it's the idea of going first. Whether they were 100% in the wrong and everybody knows it, we're still going to like try to take a 30,000 foot view of it. And this, it's probably not an hour after somebody storms off or there was a, misconnection or miscommunication. A couple of days or maybe even weeks after. You go first. Shoot that person a text. Hey, it was really great to see you at Thanksgiving. I'm sorry that things got kind of weird.
And only own your side. Own your side. Don't say anything about what they did.
Yeah,
that's a good call.
Yeah. But just like it will extend that olive branch first, and it is so difficult, and it's never guaranteed how that other person is going to react, right?
Yeah.
But it does feel really good of knowing the right thing. It's like, man, I value that relationship with my brother. He did hurt my feelings, and I know, and he stormed off or whatever, but I'm gonna say, hey man, whatever. I'd love to see you again. Thanks. Let's talk soon, kind of thing. And he can be like, oh, you think you're so good or this? And you're like, okay, well, I can't control that.
You said your piece. Yeah.
You said your piece, and it's not coming from a I'm better than you kind of thing. It's like I said, I value this relationship. Ooh, this is hard, but I'll go first kind of thing. And I know that anytime that we have had arguments, just like a stalemate, like, oh, you better not, or, whatever, Melanie historically has been the one to go first.
I win.
You do win. And I have too, but the power of going first does a lot of things, right? Most people, and when I've had friends apologize to me or you or even our kids or whatever, I've always it is always melted the ice, right? Like, oh, you're right. And it just instantly changes something. So basically it's forgiveness and grace.
Right.
Forgiveness and grace is like two key words there. And it's wisdom does now what we're going to be thankful for later. So if you can extend that olive branch, I promise you will be glad for it later.
And I will say too, like in that process of changing the trajectory of something that goes a little sideways and we didn't mean it to happen, we're wanting to change that pattern. It is very hard. It's very hard work to like catch yourself. So I'll use it as an example of us just fighting over something, right? It's many times where I've been the first person to say, man, this is not what I thought was going to happen. And this isn't what I want. How do I put the brakes on this and let him know that I was not being nice to him or whatever the scenario is. And he wasn't being nice to me, but how do I do it in a way that's going to be life-giving and help our relationship out? And it almost always works best when you just start with, wow, I really wasn't listening. I didn't really understand that. I'm sorry. Like you have to really kind of hear it from their perspective, even if you don't agree. You don't have to agree with someone to know that you have hurt them, right? And that's, I think, a key part where you don't have to have the same view on the world to know that you have hurt someone's feelings, right? And when we can start there and make our repairs there, I think it goes so much further. And then also, sort of like you were saying, float the idea of what we want to see more of. Like, man, I'm really I'm sorry I was misunderstanding you at Thanksgiving. I would love to hang out more. I really value your friendship. Something as small as that can go a really, really long way.
Well, and how disarming can that be to someone, even if they're completely puffed up and ready to, go to blows or whatever that looks like. But that's humble, that's vulnerable, and it's life-giving.
Right. And you're seeing the need of someone else too. I think that's really important. Like even if we have a disagreement, but if I can get past that disagreement and see the need within you, maybe the need is that you just want to be heard. Oh, I hear you. I hear you. That can take out the, what are you going to say?
No, I was just thinking it's something else you just introduced, and I don't want to go down a rabbit trail, but the fun thing about this time of year is that, we got Thanksgiving, and then, we get to do it all over again 4 weeks later at Christmas time. Oh, boy.
And then like a day later at New Year's if you're...
Yeah, exactly. So how much more valuable is it to go into this season with the proper mindset of, okay, I'm going to bring my best self into this. My spouse and I are on the same page. We're going to present a really good thing, regardless of how last year went or 4 years ago went, whatever that looks like, we're going to do the best to bring this or to make this the best possible gathering.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, and a really great practice is imagine that it's January 15th and you're looking back at your holiday season. Go, how do you want it to have gone? Not how did it go last year, 4 years ago, 10 years ago. Project yourself out into the future and say, write a paragraph, write a pretend paragraph of how your ideal holidays went, and then shoot for that target, right? It gives us a place to start. It puts a vision in our head of how it can be. And that's a really motivating element of it. And it feels good when we can go, oh, I want these things. I want this to happen. And so, but these are they're a messy season. And if we don't get out in front of them, we just wonder why we're stuck in the mud every year with gravy on us and cranberry sauce.
Stuck in the gravy?
Yeah, stuck in the gravy.
Yeah, I just got the idea. I think I'm going to call this episode The Food Fight.
The Food Fight. Stuck in the gravy.
Food Fight.
I love it.
You think I'm joking? I'm writing this down.
Family of origin drama.
Yeah, you're right.
I always like to leave room at the end if my guests had something on their heart that they just wanted to share. Maybe they thought we were going to get to and we didn't.
Time to share.
I don't think so. I
think I feel that we covered a lot of stuff, and I'm happy to listen back and go, oh yeah, that is. I will remember that.
Right. I think the one thing I would say that's like put a pin in your hat or whatever, a feather in your crown or something, is the idea.
You're mixing a lot of metaphors there.
I know, right? Like zero correct. And now I just want to make up more bad ones.
A cherry on top
keep doing it.
Your,
cherry on the gravy. But it's this idea that who would you be without the thought that I'm offended? That right? Who would you be if you could just take that? Oh, they did this to me, or they whatever. What would it change, especially around the holidays? What would it look like if you could keep your peace and stay centered regardless of what goes on around you? Now, that is, of course, not if someone is physically abusive or violent or whatever. These are different scenarios. But if it's just oh, I'm really annoyed right now, see if you can release that annoyance. What would that look like? That is a meditative Zen vibes practice. Try it out. Get up above it. See what that feels like. It's surprisingly peaceful up in the clouds.
Sure. Well, and when you're wearing a Crisco hat, you just want stuff to go smooth.
That's right. Smooth. Glide straight through the
Where did you score a Crisco hat, bro? That's next level.
OG Tim, from OG Tim.
My dad, right?
His dad.
He sells and resells collectibles and stuff. And this hat is actually 30 years old,
right?
Which is kind of cool. It's in perfect condition.
Awesome.
Oh, right on. And of course, being from the South, every biscuit I ever ate was made with Crisco and or Mards.
Right. Yeah. Can't be Southern without Crisco.
Yeah, that's right.
No.
That would
or
be
biscuits.
Funny. You can't spell South without Crisco. That'd be funny because it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
I'm seeing another T-shirt.
Right.
So.
Your mom likes Joyce Meyer.
Your mom likes Crisco.
Okay, guys, wrapping it up. I hope you liked the first episode in FOOvember, our Family of Origin month. I hope you have a lot of questions. I hope you got some good insights. If you have further questions, email us, hello@anatomyofmarriage.com. We will answer your questions on the show, get you hooked up with more Family of Origin resources, and help walk with you through this, because it's a lot.
And Stephen asked me, actually, after we recorded this episode, what a good resource would be to learn about Family of Origin. And The Family Ties That Bind by author someone, so-and-so.
Just Google the
at
book.
soandso.com.
Family Ties That Bind.
Family Ties That Bind. It has little Russian nesting dolls on the front of it. It is a great place to start for Family of Origin education. And it's a very easily digestible book, even though it's not really meant for...
It was the first book that I read in my 3-year graduate program. And it set the stage for a lot of learning, a lot of unlearning, and it was awesome. So Family Ties That Bind, go Amazon it, Google it, whatever you got to do. We hope you enjoyed the show. Again, email hello@anatomyofmarriage.com with all your questions, and we will answer them.
All right. Have a great day.
Later.
Bye.